Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Perspective Philosophy, where we try to better our perceptions of the world through philosophical discussion. Today I am responding to Kalel. Kalel is a YouTuber who recently made a video saying, I'm not a vegan anymore. Or I think it was why I'm not a vegan. I can't remember the exact title, to be entirely honest with you. But essentially in the video she outlines that she is not a vegan, or she says she's 98% vegan.
You just feel like when you're vegan, you have to be 100% perfect vegan. Otherwise, you're not really vegan. I don't know, maybe I'm crazy, but I really do struggle to be a 100% perfect vegan.
So the problem that Kalel is having really is to do with her rules. She starts by outlining the rules of veganism.
I wrote a list of some of the basic rules of being a perfect vegan, and I'm gonna read them off to you guys.
So according to Kalel, there's these 12 rules of veganism. She goes through them one by one, I think it's about 12, and she outlines that this is what you have to do day to day to be a vegan, at least from what you can think of, and she tries to boil it down in these rules.
But as you can see, it doesn't make going vegan as easy as vegans like to make it seem.
Now, this is the problem. She creates a deontological structure around veganism. A deontological just means a rule-based structure. So this would be like the 10 Commandments in Christianity. It would be like the law in your country. It's a rule-based system in which you follow day to day, point by point. Now, the problem with a deontological system is that you have to constantly refer to it. You constantly look into this system to understand how you should be behaving. Now, veganism is not deontological. Although she defines veganism with these 12 rules, the vegan society already have a definition. The definition is
a philosophy and a way of living which seeks to exclude, as far as is possible and practicable, all forms of exploitation of and cruelty to animals for food, clothing, or any other purpose, and by extension promotes the development and use of animal-free alternatives for the benefit of humans, animals, and the environment. In dietary terms, it donates the practice of dispensing with all products derived wholly or partly from animals.
Now, if you look at that definition, you'll see that it's not a rule-based structure.
I'm just so sick of structuring my entire life.
In fact, it's a utilitarian structure, meaning that it's based on utility, bringing the greatest good for the greatest number. Now, vegans tend to be either utilitarian or virtue ethical. Now, I'm a virtue ethicist myself. I look into bettering myself by creating the greatest good, and I try to create good habits and propagate good interaction with the world. So when we approach the world day to day, it becomes what Aristotle calls second nature. Second nature means that I don't have to try to be vegan. I don't have to really struggle day to day to be vegan. Being vegan is just what I am. It's who I am. And that is how identity and veganism collide. Unfortunately, Kalel's idea of veganism and identity is a bit different. She even starts by saying that she's worried that people are going to take her vegan card.
So scared that people are going to freak out on me and take away my vegan card.
Now, I don't know about any other vegan, but I never got an ID. And I never got like, oh, here's my vegan card. And it's not like that. And she even uses the words vegan persona,
and just ditch everything, wake up the next day, sell all your things, and just really commit to your new persona.
As if it's a mask or some sort of like costume that you wear. Now, veganism isn't about appearances. And an ethical identity isn't about how you look to other people. Although it does impact institutional moral dimensions, it should not impact how you approach ethical decisions. So, me being a vegan, I don't think about how people are looking at me when I'm buying a vegan product. I think about the damage that would be done if I bought the non-vegan one. And that's what I internalize, and that becomes my identity. My identity is a reflection of me and who I am and how I behave, rather than how I want to be seen. So the point is, vegans are not this moral police. We do not stand over everyone like, you did that wrong, you did this wrong, and when we're pointing out how much percentage vegan are you today, what level of vegan have you reached?
It's obvious that you are suffering, and humans are animals, so in reality, your actions are contributing to animal suffering, and we just can't have that.
What we instead are trying to promote is an ethical life. An ethical life is one where you try and prevent harm done to sentient beings, where you look at the world day to day and you engage it in a manner where you try and prevent suffering to animals and to humans in your day to day life. Just as if I don't go out and beat children, I don't feel a strain of that. And that's something that I think Kalel wouldn't either, showing that you can internalize an ethical structure. She can feel at home within an ethical structure so long as she internalizes it properly. If I get angry at someone in the street, I don't feel like I need to refer to rules to tell me not to hit them. I know that hitting them is wrong and I don't do it. And that's something that Kalel needs to do with buying chocolate.
There are times when I'm checking out at Target and I see a candy bar that I had as a child and I miss it and I just grab it and I eat it.
She even says herself that she understands that when she buys this chocolate, that she thinks of a calf being ripped away from its mother. And that's what happens, but she has this subconscious loophole.
You know, the point is, I don't know. Even though I have a really heavy conscience, it's just still somehow there's like this little loophole in my brain that is telling me that it's okay to have these few tiny things.
And I think this loophole really is because of her identity. She's not properly internalizing an ethical life, but instead is understanding herself as an ethical persona. And I understand that she has this perfectionist problem and that she struggles with perfection, but that's not how life works. You know, we all are fallible and we all do make mistakes. Now, she uses an example of a mistake when she buys leather boots. And she finds out that they're not man-made and they're actually leather.
You know what? I'm so sick of this. I had been looking for just a basic black boot for literally ever. Finally found it. I was so excited. It said all man-made materials. Why can't I say that? All man-made materials. I get it, and the bottom of the boot, like literally, like, you know, like the little traction pad, like this big, a little thing on the bottom of the boot, is bonded leather. I'm like, why? Why is this so hard? So in situations like that, again, all of my shoes are vegan besides that one pair of boots.
Now, this isn't a mistake. This is deliberate. A mistake would be like, for example, I bought some crackers the other day. I picked up 2 packs. One of them was completely the wrong pack. I had opened it and I found out they weren't vegan and I couldn't take them back. Now, I threw them away actually, but the point is that I couldn't do anything about that. I can't will backwards. I can't go back in time to change my actions. Now, she says that she didn't want to send these boots back a 10th time, and I understand that it's frustrating.
I'm so sick of this.
But the whole point of what Peter Singer says when he says,
if a being suffers, there can be no moral justification for refusing to take that suffering into consideration. No matter what the nature of the being, the principle of equality requires that its suffering be counted equally with the like suffering insofar as rough comparisons can be made of any other being.
Is to show that we are trying to make rough comparisons. If you make rough comparisons between our suffering, then you'll understand that sending boots back a 10th time is not equivalent to being skinned, which is what happens to the animals. They have to be skinned alive a lot of the time and they're treated very, very horribly. In fact, I'm not going to include any of the footage, but I will include a link below to the Land of Hope and Glory to see, you know, what kind of animal abuse goes on right here in the UK. I think a big problem with what Kalel even thinks about being vegan is that to be a vegan, one of our rules she gives is actually you have to throw away all of your non-vegan stuff.
And I wasn't really wearing clothing with leather, but I was still like clutching onto my bags and my shoes for dear life. I didn't want to get rid of them. And so many people were judging me for it, and I just wasn't ready.
If you bought something before you were vegan, use that, wear it out, and then throw it away and then buy a new vegan product. Because the harm is already done when you've bought the product. Because veganism is an abolitionist movement that works with supply and demand. We do not demand animals suffer, and the supply will diminish in turn. 500 million animals were saved because vegans and vegetarians stopped buying meat. And so the meat industry produced less cows to kill. But you don't have to throw away all of your non-vegan stuff. And I think Gary shows this really well in an interview with an Israeli interviewer when he says,
some people, in fact most people, weren't raised vegan, so they've gone vegan later on in life. So they might have already had leather shoes. Well, at that point, the damage has been done. What's the point of throwing them in the trash when the damage is done and you weren't aware of the atrocity that you were taking part in? So maybe people are just wearing them out. And I do advise people to do that. You can either wear out your old animal skin stuff or you can give it away.
And I think you got to remember that ethics begins when you leave yourself. Ethics cannot take an egoistic approach. You can't understand yourself as an ethical persona. You have to really engage with the other, the individual who will face suffering or death through your actions. If you are harming another individual, your approach to that harm is what defines your ethical action. So when you buy that chocolate bar and you think of that animal screaming in pain, that is when you make your ethical decision. It's that animal that inspires you to be ethical. It's not something that comes from you. It's not something that emanates from you, but emanates from them. You're met with a moral obligation. Levinas shows this when he says,
"The resistance of the other does not do violence to me, does not act negatively, it has a positive structure, ethical."
Ethics is not a negative. It's a positive structure that frees us from ourselves. We are determined by our egoism, by our selfish interests at times. And ethics allows us to escape them into a moral dimension, into an ethical dimension that gives us objectivity. It gives us freedom, but it also prevents the suffering and death of millions, if not billions, of people and animals on a day-to-day basis. So that's where you need to approach ethics, Kalel. You don't need to understand it as a rule-based structure. You need to focus on the individuals that suffer, internalize their suffering, come closer to them, and you'll understand that to be a better person is not to follow rules, but is to do the right thing on behalf of the animals. So one thing I really do want to commend Kalel for bringing up, and I do think is an actual problem within the vegan community, is this whole boycotting non-vegan companies idea, where you'll boycott a company because it has non-vegan products, even when it creates a vegan product, aimed at the vegan community that's cruelty-free and it's vegan. Well, that's ridiculous because of the whole way veganism works on supply and demand.
Like, for instance, Ben & Jerry's. Ben & Jerry's has launched like 10 non-dairy flavors. And yes, I promote those products because I'm excited to see that shift in the market. Now, does Ben & Jerry's profit heavily from the abuse of dairy cows? Yes. Does that feel good? No. But I understand the importance of causing that shift in supply and demand.
If you do not give companies an avenue to escape into, they will become an opposition to the vegan movement. You've created an enemy out of Unilever, or you've created an enemy out of Ben & Jerry's, and you don't want that, because then they're going to start funding media outlets to essentially suppress veganism. They're going to start lobbying against, vegan laws, and they're going to start, really buying out vegan companies in order to destroy them. So it would be ridiculous. And I would also like to say that you don't know what happens to your money once you've actually gave it to a vegan company. They could be using that for anything they want to, because once the money's left your hands, it's up to them. But the reality of capitalism and post-capitalism is that a lot of these small businesses will eventually be bought up by larger ones. The sad reality is capitalism's not a fair system, and, small businesses do struggle to sustain themselves in this capitalist format. So if you're only supporting small workers' cooperatives like Suma, which I think is great, by the way, well done, Suma, the reality is that you're not really going to get anywhere. Now, although that we have created a vegan institution, and I think it's impressive, we should use every institutional format we can to promote the vegan movement, because that will bring the greatest success for our ethical system. Marx even shows that institutions create people just as much as people create institutions, something that Guattari even points out in his cultural hegemony. And so we should operate within the system, use our power within the system to promote an ethical movement. Now, northern institutions, northern industry within America benefited from the removal of slavery. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't have removed slavery. Women's liberation benefited the capitalists who wanted cheaper labour and, greater consumerism. But should we have not liberated women? Should women have not fought for their liberation to fight capitalism first? Of course they shouldn't have. Operating within the powers of the institutions is necessary at times to create a greater good. So when you're buying Ben & Jerry's and when you're buying these other products and you're from non-vegan companies, what you're doing is you're giving them an avenue of escape.
I can see a future where Ben & Jerry's is nothing but non-dairy ice cream.
You're really allowing it to grow within the institutional format of capitalism, and you're really liberating animals as quickly as possible. If you go on adapt.org and you see that kill counter go up and how fast it goes up, you will agree with me that we need to dismantle this animal agricultural business faster than we do capitalism, because individuals are dying by the billions every year. Trillions if you include sea life, because it is measured in tons. They are so alienated from the moral dimensions of these businesses that they are killed at rates that are incomprehensible until we really just bring it down to how many tons of animal we collected. We don't even know what kinds of animal they are, we collect them so much. So you understand that we have to get rid of these businesses as quickly as possible. So if you want Kalel to see this video, perhaps tweet it to her or comment on her video, and hopefully we can get her to a point when she feels more at home in herself and isn't having to put her on a persona to be vegan, and we can help her achieve her moral goals, as she says. So I hope you've all enjoyed this video. If you'd like to give it a thumbs up, and as always, try to gain some perspective.